Hello and welcome to BookBeat. My name is Sue Ellen Zagrabelny, your host. BookBeat is the place for all things literary. Our guest today is Bonnie Graves. She is the author of Catch Me When I Fall. And Bonnie, welcome to BookBeat.
Well, thank you so much, Sue Ellen. It's just such a pleasure to be here and an honor, I will say. I've enjoyed watching your program, and I think you do an excellent job of bringing books and authors to the general public.
Well, thank you. Could you please share with our audience a bit about Catch Me When I Fall? But we have a no spoiler zone here.
I read that, yes. Well, Catch Me When I Fall is basically about a young girl, 12 years old, Emma, who is on a quest to find the father that she never knew and her mother refuses to talk about.
So that sounds like that could be all kinds of adventures.
It is, it is.
It is. What makes this book different?
What makes this book different? Well, I don't know of too many books that are set during the Depression that revolve around a circus. I think you'll probably be able to find books written for children where the child does not know a parent, is in search of the parent, so in that way it's similar to others. But I think every book, because the author is bringing his or her own experiences into the story, it's going to be a different story, no matter if the plot perhaps has been done before.
Okay, so you've kind of indicated that this is a different book, even if the subject has been covered before. Is that what you're saying?
I don't know if the exact subject has probably been covered before. I mean, there's books about the Depression and there are books about children in search of their parents. But because Emma is who she is going to look at the world differently, react to the world differently than any other character that you might read about that might be looking for a parent or have an experience at the circus.
Okay, that's very interesting. And you've shared a little bit about Emma. Can you tell us anything about the other characters in the book?
There is her mother, who is a single mom, obviously, because Emma does not know who her father is, so there's never been a father around. There are her two cousins who give her a bad time. And there is a grandfather who's quite supportive of her, and her friend Nan. So those are the basic characters in the story.
What makes for a good character?
Well, I think for me, a good character is someone who has flaws, but yet is likable. And in the case of Emma, I think in some ways she may have more flaws than maybe some of the other characters you might run into. She's headstrong.
But that's good.
It is good. She's a very brave individual, and she knows what she wants, and she goes to try and get it.
And how do you give these people, these characters, depth, taking them from being words on a page
Right.
to being three-dimensional?
For me, a lot of that comes from really, really, really understanding your characters. And that means knowing their backstories.
Mm-hmm.
So for the characters in Catch Me When I Fall, I will try and go back to where before the story begins and see where what their problems and difficulties might have been, whatever might have gone on before the story actually begins.
So what shaped them?
exactly what makes them the person that they become or that they are, and so that when you're in the story, when they're reacting to events and people in the story, it comes from their character, from who they really are. You really have to, an author definitely has to know her characters.
Okay. Tell me about where and when the action takes place. You mentioned the Depression.
Right.
But where?
Well, it takes place in Racine, Wisconsin, and as I said, during the Depression.
Okay.
It takes place, most of the action takes place at the circus, because it's here that Emma is searching for her father.
Oh, surprising. You indicated information about backstory, that you spent time doing that. How big a role did research play in you preparing this book?
Well, it played a major role because obviously, I didn't grow up during the Depression, so I had to do a lot of research on the Depression. During that time, I used the internet quite a bit. The Wisconsin Historical Society was a big help. The Circus Historical Society.
In Baraboo?
And on the internet, they have a wonderful resource there. I went and got the old articles or the old newspapers from the Racine Journal-Times and looked at the radio shows that were on. I had to know about the culture of that time, what people were saying and watching and eating. And
so it becomes a holistic research. You have to build something
right
around these characters so they have a place to act.
Exactly. Can I add a little bit to that?
Oh, please do.
So much of the research happens all through the process. You begin, you try and inform yourself of that time, and you get the knowledge of what has happened in the Depression and during the circus, but a lot of it then comes up as you're writing. I needed to know when I got to the aerialist exactly how that act works and how people, fly through the air and all the mechanisms of the trapeze and how they set up the circus tent. And I got a lot of help from circus people who were very, very generous in their information that they would give, and built little friendships with some of the circus people. They're just the most delightful people.
What, if I can take kind of a tangent, when you talk to these people, most of the big circuses are gone.
Yes, they are.
What are they doing? How are they?
There's still circuses around. You would be amazed. There's circuses everywhere. Circus is a huge phenomenon still. They've had trouble because of the animal rights and that, with the animals. So the animals don't play a significant role as they did back in the day, which they do in Emma's story, quite a significant role, the animals. And people are so interested. You'd be surprised how many people are interested in still going to the circuses.
That's amazing. I
didn't either. Yeah.
I had assumed that, when the big circuses closed, and that piece of the culture disappeared, that people would just disappear and do something.
There's something about the circus. There's just something about the circus that is special. And now they don't have the, huge circuses that you said. But remember, during that time, that was the entertainment. A circus came to town and it was a huge deal. Because, no television, a little bit of radio, but and some movies, but the circus brought, it just brought the exotic animals and daredeviling acts and three rings of just everything going on. It was really fun to research.
What is the age group that you directed this book?
Well, Emma's 12. And when I wrote the story, when I write any story, I just try to get into the psyche and the skin and experience the world through the character, no matter how old they are. So I'm thinking, many adults have been reading the book and coming away enjoying it. Who I would direct it to, I don't think I really would direct it to any, but it's the publisher who would then decide where they're going to market the book.
Oh, that's part of it.
Yeah, yeah. So this is marketed as a middle grade tween novel.
Okay.
Because the character is 12.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean that adults can't read it and enjoy it either. That's
true. Or that maybe a little younger kids could be read to.
Yes.
That. Did anything surprise you when you were meeting your characters through the book?
Well, I think if you ask any author who writes fiction, there are a lot of surprises in writing a novel. And you kind of, you know your character, but you don't know exactly how he or she is going to react to a certain situation. So sometimes that will surprise you. Sometimes events surprise you. You're writing along, and suddenly, in this case, here's one example. Emma's at the circus in the big top watching, the big show, and she needs to get out of the circus tent because she thinks this is her opportunity to go and see this man, this flying, Filippo the Flying Wonder, who she believes could be her father. So after his act, she goes through the stands and tries to escape. And what happens when she gets to the door? The clowns come in. Can I read that section?
Yes, please do.
So this was total surprise to me when I had her running out, trying to get out desperately. And so she's trying to get out. All right, imagine her, stepping over the aisles and the people, and they're yelling down in front because here she is, and she's just desperate. She's got to see this Filippo. And just as she stepped onto the sawdust floor of the hippodrome track, clowns sprang through the performer's entrance. Quickly, she sidestepped the barrage of clowns in her desperate attempt to get out of the tent and find Filippo. But instead of reaching the outside, she found herself swept along in a frenzy of flapping feet, honking noses, and tooting horns. One clown snatched her hat, her hair tumbling out. He pulled off his cone-shaped hat and plunked Granddad's fedora on his bald head. Then he jammed his own pointy hat on her head, snapped the rubber band under her chin, and clapped his white-gloved hands, his painted smile a wild ride. "Just go along with this kid," the clown whispered. "It'll be fun." The other two clowns scooped her up by the elbows and carried her along with them. The crowd howled. When they reached the center ring, the clowns tossed Emma into a blanket and began flinging her in the air. Up she flew and down she fell while the band played and the crowd hooted. Emma's stomach tickled, but the clown was wrong. She wasn't having fun. The clowns had spoiled her chance to find Filippo. But that wasn't the worst of it. What if her mother stood watching inside the big top? You see, her mother had always told her to never go near the circus, and She was disobeying her mother, who doesn't know where she is. As if reading her thoughts, the clowns cocooned the scratchy mildew and hay-smelling blanket around her. Her stomach squeezed up the nearly digested peanut butter and lemonade. She swallowed the bitterness back down, but barely. She felt herself being carried, bounced and jounced while the band played and the audience roared. After what seemed like an eternity, the sack opened and she toppled onto the dusty ground outside the tent. Dark clouds had gathered in the sky, throwing the circus lot under their shadows. The clown wearing Granddad's fedora bent over and yanked off his own hat off Emma. He stared at her hair. "Here's your hat, girlie. You did great," he said, handing her Granddad's fedora and a red checkered handkerchief. "A little souvenir for you."
How nice. Oh, that sounds exciting. That sounds exciting. It was what I found when I read the book was she's such an adventurer. She wants to do things the best way she knows how to do them. I'm thinking of deciding to wear Granddad's fedora and
Well, she has to masquerade as a boy because otherwise she knows she could never get a job at the circus. She has to pretend to be something she's not.
so it's just the adventuresomeness, is, if that's a word, adventurousness, I think that's the right word, that really intrigued me about her.
She's one brave, gutsy girl. I agree.
That is so true. You referred a little bit to the research process for this book.
Mm-hmm.
How do you make things so authentic? What details, or do you pull out, or do they just kind of emerge from your research?
I think both, Sue Ellen, both of those things. To really make a story come alive so that your reader is part of the experience, can conjure up images in his or her mind, smells, sounds. So those are the really important details that you need to put into a story, are the sensory details, sights, sounds, smells. And I think if you put enough of those in, the reader actually is living through the story with the character. My granddaughter, 10-year-old granddaughter, after she read the story, she said to me, "It was like watching a movie."
That's the sign of a good book.
I was very pleased.
You should be. You should be. You talked about the research process. What else do you do in your writing to put your stories together? How do you do it? Tell the audience about your process.
Oh my goodness. Actually, it's probably a little bit different for each project.
Okay. How so?
Okay, so sometimes an idea will come to you, just sort of out of the blue. And it's usually a character with a problem, and it starts niggling at you. And when that comes, or it used to when I had more time to write stories, I would just scribble it down with anything I had at the moment, an envelope or piece of paper, scratch a paper. And then it would just kind of build in my imagination until I felt it was time, okay, I'm going to start this. So then I would begin, and usually just start, just begin with the first chapter, the first scene, which, as you probably know very well, Sue Ellen, the first chapter isn't always the one that remains the first chapter.
That's true.
Sometimes it ends up, in the middle. Sometimes it ends up on the floor and not used. But just beginning, and that's the fun part. And you just, sometimes I do it longhand.
Okay, that was going to be my next question.
Sometimes, just most of the time, yes. I would say if I look back at my manuscripts, most of the time I do see a couple pages of pencil or pen writing. Mm-hmm. And then when I feel I'm ready, to the computer. Start it out. Many, 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 many drafts.
Yes, yes. Do you write every day?
Do I write every day? Yes, I do. To-do lists, email, notes to friends and family, and I've been writing the text for yearbooks that I make for my 4 grandchildren of their years.
Oh, fun.
So those things you'll find me probably doing every day. The writing projects, my fiction, when I'm involved in a project, I go to my computer every day and work on it. And if I'm so entrenched in the writing process, it's hard to pull away. And I have a really hard time with transitions. So leaving the story, leaving what's going on in your imagination and being with these characters, and then having to pull away from them and go into this world, which is the real world I'm in.
Mm-hmm. So you are a binge writer, maybe?
I have been.
You have been? Okay.
Yes, I have been. And sometimes it's hard not to just keep going back. You gotta make dinner, you gotta do the laundry, you gotta do this, that, or the other thing, and then that story. Oh, come on, I just want to go and be with that character, be with that story again. Mm-hmm.
Do you belong to a writer's group?
Not currently, but I have been a member of many writers' groups, and I have to tell you, Sue Ellen, that these writer groups have probably been the most significant part of helping me grow as a writer and becoming published.
Really?
Yes.
How so? Tell us more.
Well, these are people who are also writing, so they know the process, and they know, the difficulties, the challenges, and they just read your manuscripts and give you feedback. And that feedback is what helps you make the story into a better story, into something that people will actually enjoy reading.
As you said that you're not currently a member of a writer's group, how are you getting your feedback?
Well, can I tell you why I'm not currently part of one?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so my husband is now retired, and so we travel a lot, and so it makes it almost impossible to, do anything on a regular basis. So I would, can't attend meetings on a normal schedule, let's say. Mm-hmm. So now I have to depend on my writer friends who I've developed over the years to get feedback from them. So we do an exchange. In fact, I have a friend in California, Margot Sorensen, who's an excellent writer and so generous with her time and thoughts and critiquing mine. So we exchange manuscripts.
Well, that's
over the, just email them.
Yeah, thank God for the internet.
Oh, I know it. Isn't that true?
It's amazing how people did it before. There are still folks out there that are using a yellow legal pad
Yes.
and a number
Yes,
2
yes,
pencil.
yes.
But I think they're becoming rarer and
They
rarer.
are becoming rarer.
But just the idea of being able to sit down and move paragraphs around, and
It's freeing in a way. It is quite freeing to be able to do that. But I wanted to add just a little anecdote here about writers' groups. When I first started the writing process, began writing and hopefully becoming published, which I guess most people who, when they write, think, oh, it'd be really nice to have a larger audience than just, my friends. It was very hard for me to go to my first writers' meeting. I saw a sign posted for it somewhere at a library, and so I told my husband. He encouraged me to go, and I said, well, I just feel like I'm playing writer, I'm really not a writer, and these are all writers, and what if they laugh at my work? But I went there, and they were just so helpful and so welcoming. And that's what I found ever since in the writers' groups that I belonged to.
And guess what? I bet you some of them felt the same way.
I think so. I would just encourage your listeners, if they are kind of feeling the same way, or your viewers, I should say. I guess we're on TV.
That's right.
I would encourage them to find some people to share their work with, writers' groups.
That's really cool. I belonged to a writers group once, and I had that same feeling of, oh my gosh, they're going to figure out that I don't know what I'm doing.
Oh, that's the fear. That was the big fear.
Yes. You talked a little bit about the things that surprised you with a character. Could you elaborate on that a little bit? What in your writing process surprises you sometimes?
What in my writing process surprises me? I suppose sometimes something will come up when I'm writing and think, oh, where did that come from? Writing in a way is kind of a spiritual experience.
Yes.
You feel like, there's just something more than, I know this is just all in your brain and imagination, but sometimes things come and you go, now where did that come from?
Synergy, as it were.
Yeah, synergy with the
with the universe.
With the universe.
Could you highlight some of the other books that you have written? Because Catch Me When I Fall is not the first children's book you've written.
Sure. Well, my first published children's book is The Best Worst Day, which was published by Hyperion Books for Children. And then close after that was Mystery of the Tooth Gremlin, and then there was No Copycats Allowed. These are all Hyperion chapter books. These are books written for, well, they marketed them for ages 7 to 9, I would say, sort of beginning chapter books.
Yeah.
And then my next chapter book was for a little bit older reader. My main character is 11 years old, and that is Taking Care of Trouble, which I'm happy to say was picked up by North Carolina Children's Book Choices as one of their picks for that year. It was, well, I guess the year after it was published.
Well, that's exciting to,
yes, that
to be acknowledged for what you're doing.
Yeah, it is, especially for the kids to, because that's who I'm hoping will read the books and find something of themselves in the characters. That's always, I think we didn't talk about that when we talked about character.
Yeah, say a little bit more about that.
Well, my hope is that when kids pick up a book that I've written, that they will find something of themselves in there that will maybe
Okay.
give them, a little bit of hope to be able to solve if there's a problem that the characters has, that, well, maybe if this, this kid could do it, maybe I could too.
Uh-huh.
Or I understand how he feels, somebody else understands how I feel.
That's important for kids, regardless of the age, to not feel like they're alone.
Exactly.
In their feelings. Well, adults feel that way too.
I know.
Understanding that you're not alone and that other people have been in this situation. Each of us is unique in the way that we handle things.
Right.
But
there's a commonality.
yes.
Yes.
Exactly. Exactly.
And this is what story can do for us.
Yes. You are a former teacher. How would you say, if anything, has your teaching background informed your writing?
I suppose it's because I have a good idea of kids of a certain age, having spent many, many hours of the day with them.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of understand, what goes on in their little minds and what their interests are, how they talk, how they play, you just kind of, I don't know, I remember back in the day when I first started teaching, I would be out in the playground with the kids, and one of the parents said to me, I think you're just one of them. So I kind of felt like there's been something of a kid that I've always taken with me, even as an adult. Parts of me have not grown up. I'm still...
That's wonderful.
I'm still a kid at heart in many ways.
So you're finding pieces of you in these characters.
Yep.
Oh, that's wonderful. And you told me not to ask this, but I'm
What?
going to ask it anyway.
Uh-oh.
About your teaching, the books about teaching reading.
Oh, okay. Well, I was a teacher, and I'm a writer, and I'm married to a professor husband who's an expert in reading. So he had ideas for the books because he's the brains behind these books, and I'm sort of the writer and the teacher and the person who has the office next to him. Or actually we have offices on opposite floors, but at least I was in close proximity, so I guess I sort of got roped into.
Oh, that's so it wasn't something you sought out.
No, he said, what do you think about this? Would you'd like to do this book? Well, okay. I'd rather do my fiction, but.
But you did it.
I did it. Well, when you love somebody, you do what you have to for them.
Yes, what you did for love.
Exactly.
Oh, that's fun.
But my love is really my fiction.
Obviously.
I mean, my writing love. But it was a great experience writing these books too. Mm-hmm. I mean, learned a lot of research, research. Of course, I had a lot of experience in the classroom, but to stay up on what's the current in the thinking. Of course, as I said, my husband's the brains behind it, my professor husband. And so it was a very freeing experience in a way, because I could just write, and I knew that I didn't have to have the last word. He read it all, and he has the knowledge and understands much more than I do, since he has a PhD, and I just, didn't quite get that far.
Some of us don't, that's true. I was wondering, how did the characters that you wrote about
In Catch Me When I Fall.
In Catch Me When I Fall, how much of you is in those characters? Is that the question?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there's probably a little bit of me in all my characters. With Emma, there is the similarity in that I grew up without a father, and I didn't know my father, and my mother just never talked about him. It was taboo in our family.
Oh my goodness.
And so this is what Emma experiences. This is her mother too, that she, just does not, the mother won't tell her anything about the father. So this is a huge mystery. And the background of mine was a mystery to me too. So in a way, I think this came about, and I don't know exactly how it evolved in the story, that this became Emma's quest. Mm-hmm. It was over a period of time, I think, that this quest to find the dad was Emma's quest.
And that emerged. You didn't know that at the beginning?
I can't remember, Sue Ellen, if I did or not. The spark for the story came from a memoir that my uncle had written about his experiences getting a job, or his experience getting a job at a traveling circus in Racine. Mm-hmm. And that memoir was so rich in detail and humor, and it just kept, haunting me. I thought, I just really want to tell this story. So I had to find then somebody whose story that was, and that turned out to be Emma.
Okay.
But I couldn't write it from a boy's point of view like my uncle had. It had to be a girl, but she had to have some very important motivation for wanting that circus job. And I can't remember if she saw that circus poster and then connected it to the picture she found in her mother's bureau that she suspects is her father. Mm-hmm.
Who knows?
So this, then things just, started happening.
Does it emerge linear? Try that one again. Does it emerge linear, in a linear fashion, or does it kind of act like a snowball?
Oh, I think that's good. Yeah, it's a snowball. But it's a snowball with one crisis after another, to move the plot along. And she had to be gutsy. She had to be brave. She had to be so many things that I never was. And she had to be able to have the smarts too, to overcome, and the courage to overcome every crisis that she runs into, and she runs into a lot. Mm-hmm.
And overcome being a girl, unfortunately.
I know, and this is sort of an undercurrent. I mean, in the story, she has to appear as a boy, or she knows that this boss man is going to kick her out and not going to give her a job. But yet, she feels proud of being a girl. Mm-hmm. So she has to hide her feminine side, and she gets a little bit upset in a way that the boss man thinks that boys are better than girls. And she would like to tell him, well, I'm a girl, I can do anything a boy can do, but she can't. Mm-hmm.
And so she shows it.
she keeps her disguise.
No, but she shows him
that she's
as good or better.
Right.
That she's as good or better than any boy.
Exactly.
Did we get to the question that...
What's that?
We were saying that there was a question that I had not asked.
No, I think you asked the one about did any of my own experiences inform the story?
Okay, yeah. Getting back to your writing and your writing process, do you have any advice for aspiring writers?
Sure.
Let's hear it.
Oh, well, there are many things. Let's see if I can pinpoint them. Okay, first of all, read.
Amen.
Read. And if you're interested in writing in a particular genre, then read that genre. Mm-hmm. If you think, I have this 10-year-old character that I, just want to write about, then read everything you can in that middle grade genre.
Mm-hmm.
And then just start. Just begin. Just put anything down on the page and just, let it write. It can be garbage, but just write anyway. And there'll be something in there.
Mm-hmm.
There'll be something in there. Just keep on. Okay, so write. Take the courage to write. And then revise.
Mm-hmm. Don't be afraid to redo your babies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that process, in that revising process, that's where your writer friends will help. Get somebody to help you look at it.
At arm's length.
Yeah, you get
Yeah.
too close to your own work, and don't fall in love with your own writing.
Mm-hmm. That's a good piece of advice.
Okay, and then when you think it's ready, submit. Don't be afraid to submit your work if you want to get it published. I mean, some people, they don't care about getting published, and that's fine, you know. But if you want to, you think your story has value and somebody else would enjoy it, then don't be afraid to submit. The problem with today's marketplace is it's very, very hard to get a book published, and a lot of people are doing self-publishing. So many of the houses, the big houses particularly, are just closed to unsolicited manuscripts.
Mm-hmm. So do you end up with smaller presses? How does that work?
Well, smaller presses are sometimes more amenable to looking at your work than big presses. Now, my first chapter books were all published by big New York publishers. Catch Me When I Fall is a wonderful new publisher out of North Carolina, Regal and Fitzroy Books. And they picked up Catch Me When I Fall.
Okay.
Okay, now I'm still working on advice to writers, so what else?
Okay. Keep going.
So once you submit your manuscripts, they're going to be rejected. That's a given. Mm-hmm. Unless you're, just luckier than can be. So you just really have to develop a thick skin and keep going. Don't give up. If you have faith in your manuscript, then keep doing it. Persevere. And that is I'm probably forgetting something, but perseverance, I think, trumps all as far as getting a book published is concerned. You just have to. It took me many years to get a book published, and many drafts, just closets full of drafts.
Question about after you got the first book published, did that make it any easier to get the next books published, or
Well,
is
in
it
that case
kind
it
of
did, yeah.
The whole process over and over?
Everybody's journey is different. My first publication was a story, and I'd written 3 stories for reluctant readers. I had heard that there was a need for these stories, so I wrote up these 3 stories. I thought they were pretty good, and sent them off to what turned out to be not the editorial offices of this publication, but to the warehouse.
Oh dear.
Yes, and you'd think it would end there. But those lovely people at the warehouse had read the stories, and they sent them over to editorial.
Oh, my goodness.
I know, and just a few months later, I get a note from the warehouse and say, you sent them to the wrong place, but we liked your stories. We all read them here, so we sent them over to editorial. So then I get, this is unbelievable, but about a month later, I get a letter from editorial of this publication and a contract for 3 of the stories. So that was my introduction to getting published.
Oh my goodness.
So I mean, to me, this was like a sign, from heaven. Oh, I'm a writer. This is what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Okay, Sue Ellen, it probably took me 10 years later to get a book published.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
How interesting.
Because it just took that much more work to write a book-length story.
Well, it's so amazing that you put perseverance at the top of the list, because that's true with almost any craft, that you have to practice,
Exactly.
you have to have discipline, you have to really want to do the work, to do the craft. And what you're saying is what writers everywhere that I've talked to, they echo what you say. And it's amazing to see and hear what your journey has been through this publishing. And
Yes.
It sounds like a
Yeah.
maze. Is it, or is it more straightforward than that?
No, you got it right. It's a maze. I mean, you just, zigzag all over the place. You get, you get wonderful, this is going to sound like an oxymoron, but you get wonderful rejection letters from these editors, and you cling them to, oh, this is such a wonderful letter. She really liked it, but she couldn't publish it for this, that, or the other thing.
Yeah.
But, you get good feedback. And I've stopped doing it, but a huge notebook of rejection letters from editors. Well, I kept them because if I'm going to send them something, in the future, I want to know what they've said about a previous manuscript that I've sent in.
Which makes sense.
So, yeah, lots of rejections.
Well, that's a real lesson for not just aspiring writers, but anyone who has a craft that they're practicing. And you're going to get rejected at times.
Yeah, you are. It's part of life. It's part
Yes,
of life.
it is. Yes, it is. Well, we're drawing to the end of our time. Is there anything we haven't covered or that you would like to add?
Oh, sure. Well, we kind of covered this a bit, but really the joy of the whole experience is in the process. It's not in the publication. I mean, it's great to have your book out there, but then that comes with all sorts of other issues and problems that I won't get into. But it's the process where the joy comes. The joy comes in just doing the writing.
Wow. You've said a mouthful. That's really important, and I think that's important for young writers to hear, that it isn't the goal, it's the process.
It's the process. And I think you talk to the majority, you've talked to many, many authors, and I think I hear the same thing. The joy is in the process. I guess the other point I would like to make would be that you've heard the phrase, it takes a village to make a child, to raise a child. Well, it takes a village to write a book too.
Say a little more about that.
Yeah, and my village would be family and friends who support what you're doing. I mean, they might think you're crazy, and you question your sanity many, many times over the process too. There's your writers group in the process, helping you become a better writer, helping you work on your manuscript so that it's the best that it can be. There's the editors that you send your manuscripts to, who take the time to, give you a little feedback even though they aren't going to publish your book. There's the editor who finally you know,
Says yes.
yes, like Janie Royal did at Regal Fitzroy Books. There are the copy editors, the designers. It's a village.
It takes a lot of folks to make stuff happen.
But as Madeline L'Engle said, see if I can remember her quote exactly. A book really never comes to life until a reader can make a book along with it.
Wow, that's wonderful. Madeline L'Engle said that?
Madeline L'Engle said that. And that, I think, is the most important thing. It's the reader. In the end, it's the reader.
Because why else do it?
So the reader has to be able to make a book along with the book or the author. So don't you feel that way though? When you read a book, I mean, it's what you experience isn't the same as the author did. It's something different because you're bringing yourself to it.
Yes, and every reader is,
Exactly.
It's a unique experience. So you're putting something on paper,
Right.
And developing characters and developing plot. But people are bringing
Their own experience.
their own experience, their own uniqueness. So you're getting
Right.
millions
Yeah.
of stories.
But if no one ever reads this, it's dead.
Yeah. And so that's why we have BookBeat, the place for all things literary.
Exactly. What a wonderful way to end.
Thank you so much, Bonnie Graves,
Thank
for
you.
joining us today.
Thank you so much, Sue Ellen.
Thank you for joining us at BookBeat, the place for all things literary. Our guest today has been Bonnie Graves, author of Catch Me When I Fall. We look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks for viewing us.